I used to think that being the man behind the curtain was a sign of a secure relationship. It turns out, I wasn't the wizard, I was just the stagehand she was planning to fire once the show went global. At 32, you start to value substance over shadows. I'm a senior project manager at a tech firm in Seattle. I deal in timelines, budgets, and risk assessment. My life is built on the idea that if you invest in something, you protect it. For 3 years, I invested everything into Emma. We shared a sleek industrial loft in Pearl District, a golden retriever named Jasper, and what I thought was a rock-solid future. Emma was an aspiring wellness and lifestyle creator. I was her biggest fan, her silent partner, and honestly, her CFO. I spent my weekends carrying ring lights and scouting authentic locations. I didn't mind being the guy holding the camera. I thought we were a team. But as her follower count climbed, I noticed the atmosphere in our home shifting. I wasn't a partner anymore. I was a variable she was trying to solve for. In the world of high-stakes branding, reality is often the first thing to be edited out. It started on a Tuesday, one of those mundane rainy evenings in the Pacific Northwest, where the grey outside makes the glow of a smartphone screen look even brighter. I was scrolling through my feed while waiting for our Thai takeout to arrive, and that's when I saw it. Or rather, I saw what wasn't there. For 2 years, Emma's Instagram bio had been our digital anchor. It had her professional handle, sure, but it ended with the hearts and a link to my profile. It was a small thing, but in her world, it was the ultimate public acknowledgement. Now, scrubbed, it was just her title, mindful living strategist, and some vague, pseudo-philosophical quote about intentional growth. I sat there for a second, the blue light reflecting off my glasses, feeling a strange pit in my stomach. When the food arrived, I tried to keep it light. Hey, I noticed the bio changed, I said, plating the pad thai. Did you lose a bet or something? She didn't even look up from her phone. Her thumb just kept flickering scroll, double tap, scroll. Oh, that? It's not a big deal, Leo. I'm just streamlining. Julian, you know, the brand consultant I told you about from the LA conference, he said the relationship status thing was cluttering my aesthetic. He thinks it makes me look less like a self-made entrepreneur and more like, well, a dependent. He said for me to hit the 500,000 milestone, I need to project an image of total independence. I set my fork down. The silence in the kitchen felt heavy. Independence? Emma, we've lived together for 3 years. I'm the one who signed your studio lease. I'm the one who stays up until 2 o'clock a.m. helping you edit your reels. She finally looked up, but her eyes were cold, professional. Leo, don't make this an ego thing. It's business. In this industry, being linked to someone is a liability. It caps my growth. I am not saying we aren't together. I'm saying the brand doesn't have room for a boyfriend. That was the moment the floor shifted. I wasn't her person anymore. I was a PR problem. I was officially bad for the brand. She didn't even have the grace to look guilty. Instead, she gave me that patronizing tilt of the head she usually reserves for her life coaching followers. Leo, honestly, she sighed. Don't be so insecure. It's just pixels. A few characters on a screen don't change us. But as I sat there in hour 4, over a month laughed, the one I mostly paid for, the irony hit me like a physical weight. It did change us. It changed the very DNA of our partnership. I looked around the room. I saw the high-end espresso machine I bought her for her birthday so she could film morning routine videos. I saw the ergonomic chair she sat in, the lighting rigs in the corner, the designer rug. All of it was part of the image she was so desperate to protect. That's when the math finally clicked in my head. Emma wanted to live a double life. In the digital world, the one she valued most, she wanted to be the unattached, fiercely independent, a girl who answered to no one. But in the physical world, she wanted a silent benefactor. She wanted the emotional labor I provided when she had a breakdown over an algorithm change. She wanted the $2,500 I covered toward the mortgage every month. And most importantly, she wanted the premium PPO health insurance plan I had her on through my firm, a plan that covered her $8 a month prescriptions for her chronic flare-ups. She wanted a ghost who paid the bills, a phantom who kept the lights on so she could shine in the center of the stage. I looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time in 3 years, I felt absolutely nothing. No anger, just a cold, clinical clarity. I realized that if she was brave enough to erase me from her perfect life, then I needed to be brave enough to stop subsidizing it. I took a slow sip of my water and just nodded. "You right, Emma," I said, my voice steady. "It's just business in my mind." I was already logging into my HR portal. If I wasn't part of her public image, I sure as hell wasn't going to be her private security anymore. The ghost was about to vanish. I didn't storm out. I didn't throw a plate or start a shouting match that would probably ended up as content on her story anyway. I just finished my dinner, told her I had some late-night deliverables for a project in Singapore, and retreated to my home office. I sat there in the dark for a moment, the city lights of Seattle flickering outside the window. Then, I opened my laptop. I logged into my company's HR portal. In the corporate world, everything is categorized. Under life events, there's a section for change in domestic partnership. I navigated to my benefits. For the last 2 years, I'd been paying an extra $450 out of every paycheck to keep Emma on my executive PPO plan. She has a pre-existing condition, nothing that stops her from living her life. It's something that requires a high-tier biologic medication every 30 days. Without my coverage, that lifestyle she was selling would get very expensive, very fast. I clicked a button. Remove dependent. Reason for change. Termination of domestic partnership. Next, I went to my life insurance policy. It was a morbid thought, but if something happened to me on the I-5 tomorrow, I wanted to make sure my assets went to someone who actually acknowledged my existence. I deleted Emma's name and replaced it with my sister's. Finally, I hit the emergency contact tab. I erased her cell number, the number I used to call every day just to say I loved her, and typed in my brother's info. It took exactly 10 minutes. 10 minutes to undo 3 years of legal and financial TIs. 10 minutes to stop being the invisible foundation of her skyscraper. I felt a strange sense of peace as I clicked submit. I wasn't being mean. I was just following her lead. If I didn't fit the brand on a screen, I certainly didn't fit the liability on my tax forms. I closed the laptop, went to the kitchen, and put my dish in the dishwasher. Emma was in the living room, bathed in the glow of her ring light, recording a voiceover about protecting your energy. I just smiled to myself and went to bed. The clock was officially ticking. The shockwaves didn't hit until the following Monday. I was at my gym in South Lake Union, mid-set on the bench press, when my phone started vibrating like a live wire on the bench next to me. 1 missed call, 2, 5, 10. By the time I sat up and wiped the sweat from my face, I had 12 missed calls and a string of texts that looked like a panic novel. I didn't call back immediately. I finished my set, drank my protein shake, and walked out to the parking lot. I knew exactly where she was. She was at that boutique pharmacy in Bellevue, the one where they give you sparkling water while you wait for your wellness prescriptions. When I finally hit dial, she picked up on the first half ring. She wasn't just angry. She was unhinged. "Leo, where the hell have you been?" she shrieked. I could hear the sterile silence of the pharmacy in the background and the muffled voice of a confused clerk. "I'm at the counter, and they're telling me my insurance is terminated. Not expired, terminated. The pharmacist says I'm not even in the system anymore. You need to call your HR right now. There's some massive glitch, and I'm standing here like an idiot because they want $820 for a 30-day supply." I leaned back against my car, looking at the Seattle skyline. I felt a calm I hadn't known in years. "It's not a glitch, Emma," I said, my voice as level as a horizon line. There was a sudden, sharp silence on the other end. "What do you mean? Then what is it?" "I just did some brand management of my own," I replied. I looked at my financial portfolio and realized that covering a non-dependent didn't align with my long-term goals. I curated my benefits to match your Instagram bio. Since being linked to me didn't fit your image anymore, I figured having you linked to my paycheck didn't fit my financial aesthetic. It's all about consistency, right? I heard her gasp, a sharp, ragged intake of air. You did this on purpose?" "Leo, this is my medication. This isn't a social media post. This is my health. And my life isn't a lifestyle choice you can edit out when a consultant tells you to," I said. "Good luck with the out-of-pocket costs." "I've got to go. I'm meeting my brother for lunch." I hung up before she could find her breath. She didn't just come home. She stormed in. The heavy industrial door of the loft slammed against the brick wall with a crack that echoed through the open floor plan. I was sitting at the kitchen island, nursing a cold brew and catching up on some industry news. When I looked up, I didn't see the mindful living strategist with the perfect glow and the curated smile. I saw a woman who had actually lived through a crisis. Her hair was messy from the humidity, her mascara was smudged, and she was wearing a hoodie I hadn't seen in months. No filters, no ring lights, just raw, unfiltered desperation. How could you? She hissed, slamming her designer bag onto the counter. You are being incredibly petty, Leo. Petty, cruel, and honestly. You're acting completely unbalanced. You're weaponizing my health over a social media update. I didn't move. I didn't raise my voice. I just looked at her over the rim of my glass, unbalanced. I repeated the word slowly. That's a strong choice of words, Emma. Let's talk about balance. For 3 years, I've balanced our rent, our utilities, and your medical bills. I've balanced the fact that you wanted me to be your rock in private while treating me like a shameful secret in public. You call it rebranding when you erase me to please some consultant in LA. I call it rebranding when I decide to save $5,000 a year by not subsidizing someone who is embarrassed to be seen with me. She started to interrupt, her face flushing a deep, angry red. It's not the same. One is business, the other is reality. I cut her off. Why is it okay for you to edit your life to fit your brand, but it's not okay for me to edit my expenses to fit my status? If I'm a liability to your image, why should I be the asset to your bank account? The silence that followed was deafening. She opened her mouth to argue, to pivot, to spin it back on me, but the words wouldn't come. She just stood there in the middle of our expensive kitchen, looking small for the first time. The realization hit her. The very safety net she had been standing on, the one that allowed her the luxury of worrying about aesthetics and engagement, was the same one she'd been trying to cut for months. She had tried to have the independence of a single woman and the security of a partner. She just didn't realize that in my world, you don't get to have both if you can't offer respect in return. She didn't break all at once. It was a slow leak. She started pacing the length of the loft, her heels clicking against the polished concrete like a metronome. I could see the gears turning, her mind trying to find a way to spin this back into a narrative where she was the victim. But the business facade was crumbling. Julian didn't say I had to hide you, she muttered, her voice losing its edge. He said a woman of my caliber needs to project a certain aspirational energy. He told me that being tethered to a 9-to-5 guy in Seattle made me look settled. Content. And content doesn't sell. He said I'd attract a higher tier of sponsors, luxury travel brands, tech giants, if I looked like I was still on the market. I felt a cold laugh bubble up in my chest. A higher tier of sponsors? Or a higher tier of men, Emma? She stopped pacing. She wouldn't look at me, which was all the answer I needed. Julian is connected, Leo, she whispered. He's at every Soho house party. He knows the VCs. He knows the guys who run the agencies. He's been mentoring me. And yes, he made it clear that he doesn't date taken women. I didn't want to close any doors before I knew what was behind them. The air in the room felt thin. It wasn't about the algorithm. It wasn't about intentional living or professionalism. It was a cold, calculated audition for a new life. She had taken our 3 years, the nights I held her while she cried, the sacrifices I made for her career, the quiet, real moments that make a life, and she had put them on the clearance rack, hoping Julian or someone like him would place a higher bid. She wasn't building a brand. She was shopping for an upgrade, and I was just the trade and she was trying to hide until the new model arrived. She'd erased me from her bio not to grow her business, but to see if she could catch a bigger fish while I was still paying for the bait, seeing the walls close in. Emma did the only thing she knew how to do. She tried to fix the feed. She fumbled for her phone, her fingers shaking as she tapped the screen. Fine, Leo. Look, I'm doing it right now, she gasped, holding the phone up to my face like a peace offering. I watched in real time as she typed my handle back into her bio, right next to a red heart. Then she took a quick, shaky photo of the room capturing my arm and my coffee cup and posted it to her story with the tag, "My rock." She actually thought that was the price of my dignity. She thought 3 years of betrayal and a calculated attempt to replace me could be wiped clean by a few bytes of data and an Instagram tag. There, she said, her voice hopeful but desperate. It's back. Everyone can see you now. Now please, call the insurance company. I need to get back to that pharmacy before they close. I looked at the phone, then back at her. The heart in her bio looked like a bloodstain on a white shirt. It's too late, Emma, I said, and for the first time, my voice felt lighter. The fact that you think a tag fixes this is exactly why we're done. You only link to me when your bank account is at risk. You only value my presence when you're facing the consequences of my absence. Leo, please no. I cut her off. I spent 3 years being your foundation, and you tried to turn me into a secret. You didn't just remove a link. You tried to remove my humanity to make room for your image. Well, here's the thing. I'm not a lifestyle choice. I'm not a prop for your aesthetic. I'm a human being, and I deserve to be with someone who's proud of that even when the cameras are off. I stood up and walked to the door, holding it open. The cool subtle air rushed in, cutting through the scent of her expensive perfume. Pack a bag. Go stay with Julian. See if his connections include a health insurance policy and a soul. Way over. The fallout was quiet at first. I moved into a smaller, sun-drenched place in Queen and no brick. No industrial echoes. Just peace. I didn't follow her. I didn't hate watch her stories. But in a city like Seattle, the tea always finds a way to get served. About 2 months later, I heard the full story through a mutual friend. Julian did exactly what Emma hoped he would. He made a move. They started dating almost immediately after she moved out. She probably thought she'd finally ascended to that higher tier, but Comma has a wicked sense of irony. It turns out Julian was a much better brand consultant than she realized. He followed his own advice to the letter. He never posted her. Not a single photo. Not a tag. Not even a stray shadow of her in a wine glass. When she finally confronted him about it, he gave her the exact same script she'd given me. It would clutter the feed, Emma. My investors need to see me as an unattached, high-velocity asset. A girlfriend is just noise in the signal. She became the ghost. She became the invisible support system for a man who was far more committed to his aspirational energy than he was to her. She was living in the very shadow she had built for me, and she finally realized how cold it felt. One rainy Tuesday night, my phone buzzed. It was a novel of a text from her. No emojis, no brand voice, just raw, messy regret. She told me about Julian. She told me how lonely it was to be someone's clutter. She said she finally understood the weight of what she'd done to me, how she'd traded a diamond for a piece of glass. She begged for a chance to talk, to align. I read it twice. I felt a faint sting of sympathy, but it was buried under a mountain of indifference. I didn't type a single word in response. I didn't need to explain that you don't get to come back to the person who was your everything after you tried to make them nothing. I just hit block. Some lessons are best learned in the silence you created yourself. Life looks a lot different now. I'm still in Seattle, still managing projects, but the air feels easier to breathe. I've been seeing someone new for a few months, Sarah. She's a pediatric nurse at the children's hospital, and her world is as real as it gets. She doesn't care about engagement or curated aesthetics. She cares about things that actually matter, like getting a kid through a tough night in the on our 4th date. We were at this hole-in-the-wall pizza joint in Capitol Hill. The lighting was terrible. There was flour on our napkins, and we were laughing so hard my ribs hurt. Sarah pulled out her phone, snapped a quick, blurry photo of us mid-laugh, and posted it. Her caption: best night in a long time, no filters, no strategic tags, no brand consultant approved buzzwords, just us. Being happy in a moment that didn't need to be sold to anyone. It was the most beautiful thing I'd seen on a screen in years. My life is back in my own hands. My sister is still my emergency contact, and my insurance premiums dropped significantly now that I'm only covering myself. I'm no longer the invisible anchor for someone else's vanity project. Looking back, I realized that the 32-year-old version of me is far more valuable than the 29-year-old version who was willing to hide. I learned the hard way that a relationship isn't a marketing campaign, and a partner isn't an accessory you swap out when the trends change. I'm no longer part of anyone's image. I'm a priority. I'm a partner. And for the first time in a long time, the person standing next to me is proud to show the world exactly who I am. I'm Leo, and I'm finally of the clearance rack. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button. What do you think about this story? Let me know in the comments.